Have you ever lived feeling like someone else's shadow? For 5 years of marriage, that was my reality. My name is Isabella, and this is how a DNA test changed everything I thought I knew about my life. I met Marcus in college during my sophomore year. He was everything I wasn't: charismatic, successful, the kind of person who commanded attention when he walked into a room. I was shy, introverted, more comfortable buried in my psychology textbooks than at social gatherings. "You're different, Isabella," he used to tell me during our early dating days. "You're real, authentic, not fake like all these other girls." I felt completely head over heels. For the first time in my life, someone like Marcus had chosen me. During our 2-year courtship, I felt special, unique, like I had finally found my place in the world. But after the wedding, something fundamental changed between us. It started with small comments that felt innocent enough. Sarah always looked so elegant at these company events. Sarah was his coworker, successful, glamorous, always perfectly dressed with an effortless confidence I could never seem to master. I began to notice how Marcus's eyes would light up when Sarah entered a room during office parties, how he would laugh just a little too loudly at her jokes, lean in just a little too close when she spoke. The comments became increasingly direct and cutting. "Why can't you be more spontaneous like Sarah?" he'd ask after she organized some elaborate weekend getaway for their work team. "I wish you had her ambition and drive." Each comparison felt like a small knife to my heart. Desperate to become the woman he seemed to want, I began systematically changing everything about myself. I dyed my hair to match Sarah's auburn color, bought expensive clothes similar to her sophisticated style, even switched careers to something Marcus deemed more impressive. But no matter what I did, it was never enough to earn back that look of pride he used to have when he introduced me to people. The situation became unbearable when Sarah got divorced from her husband of 10 years. Suddenly, Marcus had to comfort her constantly through this difficult transition. Work meetings that mysteriously extended well past midnight, urgent phone calls that couldn't wait until morning, business trips where Sarah just happened to be assigned to the same conferences. "She's going through such a tough time," Marcus would explain whenever I questioned these late nights. "As her direct supervisor, I have a professional responsibility to support my team members." The signs of his infidelity became impossible to ignore or rationalize away. Text messages that would make his phone buzz at all hours, which he would immediately delete after reading with a secretive smile. Unfamiliar perfume clinging to his dress shirts when he returned from these emergency meetings. Lipstick stains on his collar that were definitely not my shade. One evening, after another one of his convenient work emergencies, I finally gathered the courage to confront him directly. "Marcus, I know something is happening between you and Sarah. This constant paranoia and jealousy is absolutely exhausting, Isabella. I'm not being paranoid. I can see the way you look at her, the way you talk about her." "What has changed," he said, his voice becoming ice cold, "is that I'm finally seeing who you really are underneath all that insecurity. And honestly, I don't like what I see." Those words completely destroyed me. That night, while he slept peacefully beside me, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find proof of what I already knew in my heart. The next day, while Marcus was at his office, I systematically searched through his private study. In the back of a locked drawer that I managed to pry open with a letter opener, I found what confirmed my worst fears: printed photos of him and Sarah at romantic restaurants, hotel receipts for weekend getaways I knew nothing about, even expensive jewelry receipts for pieces I'd never seen. But buried beneath all this evidence of his affair, I discovered something that made my blood run completely cold: medical documents. Marcus's fertility tests results from a private clinic. According to these official documents, dated just 6 months after our wedding, Marcus was completely and irrevocably sterile. There was absolutely no medical possibility that he could father biological children. But what really made me feel like the world was collapsing around me was finding Emma's birth certificate in the same folder. My beautiful 4-year-old daughter with her bright smile and curious green eyes. If Marcus was completely sterile and Emma was definitely my biological daughter, then the impossible question became, who was Emma's real father? I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left in my stomach. I spent the rest of that day researching paternity testing options online, my hands shaking as I read through the procedures and requirements. The next morning, I drove to a discreet private clinic across town. "We'd like to do a paternity test," I told the lab technician, trying to keep my voice steady. "There are some questions about my daughter's biological father." Getting the DNA samples proved easier than I had imagined. A few strands of hair from Marcus's brush in our master bathroom, a cotton swab with Emma's saliva after her morning breakfast, and my own cheek swab collected at the clinic. The waiting period felt like an eternity. For an entire week, I went through the motions of normal family life while internally falling apart, knowing that everything I believed about my marriage and my daughter was potentially built on lies. When the clinic finally called with the results, my hands were trembling so violently I could barely hold the phone steady. "Mrs. Garcia, we have your paternity test results. Marcus Garcia is definitively not the biological father of Emma Garcia." I left the clinic in complete shock, clutching the official documents that confirmed what I had suspected, but hoped wasn't true. Marcus had been knowingly raising a daughter who wasn't biologically his, all while keeping his sterility a carefully guarded secret from me. But the haunting question remained. If Emma wasn't Marcus's daughter, then whose child was she? I began desperately trying to piece together memories from around the time Emma would have been conceived. Then, suddenly, like a lightning bolt, I remembered something I had deliberately blocked from my memory. My bachelorette party 5 years ago. It had been an absolutely wild night. My girlfriends had insisted we bar hop through downtown, and I, who rarely drank more than a glass of wine, had ended up completely intoxicated and disoriented. I could vaguely remember getting back to my apartment, but most of the evening's details remained frustratingly blurry. I immediately called my best friend Clara, who had organized the entire bachelorette celebration. "Clara, I need you to help me remember something important about my bachelorette party. Do you recall exactly how I got home that night?" There was a long, uncomfortable pause before she answered. "Isabella, why are you asking about this now? That was over 5 years ago." "Please, Clara, it's extremely important that I know the truth." "Well," her voice sounded hesitant and worried. "The truth is, you didn't actually come home with us that night." My heart stopped beating for a moment. "What exactly do you mean by that?" "You left the last bar with someone, a man. When we tried to stop you, you insisted that you knew him and that it was completely safe. You seemed very familiar with him." "Who was this man? Did you recognize him?" "No, none of us had ever seen him before. He was tall, dark hair, very handsome and well-dressed. You acted like you knew him well, but when we asked who he was, you just kept saying he was an old friend from college." That night, driven by a desperate need for answers, I spent hours searching through old boxes stored in our attic. Hidden in a dusty container of college memorabilia, I found something that made my blood freeze in my veins. A letter addressed to me, dated exactly 2 weeks before my wedding day. The envelope was marked, "Urgent. Please read," in familiar handwriting. "Isabella, I know you're getting married soon, but I desperately need to see you one more time. There are things you need to know about Marcus, things that would completely change your decision to marry him. I'll be waiting. at Murphy's Bar on Friday night from 9 p.m. onward. If you ever truly loved me, please come." The Friday mentioned in the letter was exactly the date of my bachelorette party. The letter continued, "I can't stand by and let you marry him knowing what I know about his true character. Marcus isn't who you think he is, Isabella. And what we had together, that was real love. That was something worth fighting for." The letter was signed simply, "Always yours, Daniel." Daniel Morrison. Suddenly, suppressed memories came flooding back like a dam bursting open. Daniel had been my first serious boyfriend during my freshman year of college, before I ever met Marcus. We had been deeply, passionately in love for almost a year before he had to transfer to a university across the country for a specialized program. Our breakup had been devastating for both of us, but we had promised to stay in touch. Somehow, over the years, and especially after I started dating Marcus, we had gradually lost contact. But apparently, Daniel had returned to town just before my wedding, and he knew something about Marcus that he felt I needed to know. The terrifying question that now consumed my thoughts was, could Daniel be Emma's biological father? I immediately began searching for Daniel on social media, my heart pounding as I typed his name into various search engines. After an hour of desperate searching, I finally found him. Daniel Morrison, now a successful architect living in the city just 2 hours away. When I saw his recent photos, my heart nearly stopped beating. Emma had his exact same distinctive hazel eyes, the same dimpled smile, even the same stubborn cowlick in her hair that no amount of brushing could ever tame. With trembling fingers, I composed a private message. "Daniel, this is Isabella Garcia. I think we desperately need to talk about something very important." His response arrived within minutes. "Isabella, I've been waiting for this message for 5 long years. When can we meet?" That evening, I made the decision to confront Marcus with everything I had discovered. When he walked through the front door, still smelling faintly of Sarah's distinctive perfume, I was waiting in the living room with Daniel's letter in my hands. "Marcus, we need to have a serious conversation." I held up the letter so he could see it clearly. His face immediately went pale, and I watched all the color drain from his cheeks. "Where did you find that?" "Hidden in our attic. The real question is, why did you never tell me that Daniel had tried to contact me before our wedding?" He collapsed heavily onto the sofa, suddenly looking much older than his 32 years. "Because I knew that if you talked to him, you would never marry me." "And why would that be such a problem?" I pressed, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. "Because," he ran his hair through his head frantically, "because he would have told you things about me that would have changed your mind about everything. Things like the fact that you're completely sterile." I pulled out the DNA test results and placed them on the coffee table between us. He stared at the documents for a long moment before whispering, "I've known since the moment Emma was born that she couldn't possibly be mine. So you made the conscious decision to live an elaborate lie for 5 years?" "Because I loved you," he shouted desperately, jumping to his feet. "Because I was terrified that if you knew the truth, I would lose both you and Emma." "Marcus, you told me that Sarah is everything I'm not. Well, let me tell you something. You're absolutely right. She's a woman who's willing to settle for being a married man's secret mistress. I'm not." The next morning, while Marcus was at work, I methodically packed the most essential belongings for Emma and myself. When he returned home that evening, he found my wedding ring sitting on the kitchen table next to a handwritten note. "Marcus, for 5 years, you made me believe that I wasn't enough for you, that I needed to change everything about myself to earn your love. It turns out you were right about one thing. I am much more than you could ever deserve. Emma and I are leaving. My lawyer will contact you about divorce proceedings." 2 days later, I drove to the small cafe where Daniel had agreed to meet me. When I saw him walk through the door, it was like traveling back in time 5 years. He looked older, more mature, but those same kind hazel eyes that I saw in Emma every single day. "Isabella," he said softly, taking the seat across from me. "Thank you for reaching out to me. Daniel, I need you to tell me the complete truth about what happened the night of my bachelorette party." He took a deep breath before beginning. "You had been drinking quite a bit when you arrived at Murphy's bar, but the moment you saw me sitting there, it was like you suddenly remembered exactly why you had come. Why had I come there? Because deep down, you knew something wasn't right about Marcus. You told me you had been having serious doubts about the wedding, that something felt fundamentally wrong, but you couldn't quite put your finger on what it was." Daniel leaned forward earnestly. "Isabella, that night you told me that Marcus had been pressuring you to get married as quickly as possible. Every time you suggested having a longer engagement to really get to know each other better, he would find urgent reasons why you needed to move up the wedding date." That detail sounded disturbingly familiar. Marcus had been almost frantically insistent about having a short engagement. You also mentioned that he had been asking a lot of very specific questions about your finances, particularly about that substantial inheritance you received from your grandmother. My blood ran cold as I remembered. Grandma Rose had left me nearly $200,000, and Marcus had immediately suggested we put it all into a joint account for our future together. "What else did I tell you that night?" Daniel pulled out a manila folder from his briefcase. "You asked me to help you investigate Marcus because you had a gut feeling that he wasn't who he pretended to be." He opened the folder and spread out several official-looking documents. "Isabella, Marcus Garcia doesn't actually exist. His real name is Michael David Garber. He's been married 3 times before, always to young women who had significant money or assets." I stared at the documents in complete shock. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying he's a professional marriage con artist. He specializes in targeting vulnerable, wealthy women, marrying them quickly, gaining access to their finances, and then either disappearing or creating situations that lead to divorce where he can claim a substantial portion of their assets." With shaking hands, I immediately pulled out my phone and accessed my bank accounts. Daniel was absolutely right. Over the past 5 years, Marcus had been making regular transfers from our joint account to accounts I had never seen before. "That night at the bar," Daniel continued gently, "you told me you wanted to feel something real and honest before you potentially made the biggest mistake of your life. And yes, we were together, but Isabella, it wasn't just physical. It was 2 people who had truly loved each other reconnecting for what we thought might be the last time." Tears began streaming down my face. "Emma is your daughter, isn't she?" "I've suspected it from the moment I heard she was born. When you sent me that message saying we needed to talk, I hoped it was about her." I pulled out the official DNA test results and slid them across the table. "Marcus can't have children. He's been sterile for years." Daniel studied the documents with tears forming in his eyes. "I have a daughter. Do you want to meet her?" "More than anything else in the world." 6 months later, my life had transformed completely. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly once my lawyer presented evidence of Marcus's true identity and fraudulent activities. Michael Garber, as he was legally known, had no choice but to accept a settlement that returned most of my stolen inheritance. Sarah, predictably, vanished the moment she discovered that her lover was not only married, but also a career criminal facing potential fraud charges. Apparently, her passionate love affair wasn't strong enough to withstand the prospect of legal complications and public scandal. Emma adapted to meeting Daniel with surprising ease. Perhaps it was because she finally had a father figure who genuinely loved her unconditionally, without hidden agendas or secret resentments. Daniel was patient, kind, and completely devoted to getting to know his daughter. "Mommy, is Daniel really my daddy?" Emma asked me one sunny afternoon while we were coloring together at the kitchen table. "Yes, sweetheart. He's your biological father, and he loves you very much." "Is that why I have his funny eyes?" She giggled, pointing to her distinctive hazel eyes. "That's exactly why, my clever girl." Daniel and I are taking our renewed relationship very slowly and carefully. After 5 years of lies, manipulation, and emotional abuse, I'm learning to trust again gradually. But for the first time in years, I wake up each morning feeling genuinely hopeful about the future. When Marcus told me she's everything you're not, he was absolutely right in ways he never intended. Sarah was indeed everything I'm not, willing to accept lies and deception, willing to settle for being someone's secret, willing to live in the shadows of a stolen life. I am a woman who deserves complete honesty, authentic love, and genuine respect. And finally, after years of searching, I have found exactly that. The DNA test didn't just reveal Emma's true paternity, it revealed the truth about who I really am underneath years of manipulation and self-doubt. And that woman is infinitely stronger, braver, and more worthy of love than anyone, including myself, had ever dared to imagine. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.